Good afternoon, my dear friends. Respected Professor Ruby Oja, my colleague and one of India's most respected psychiatrists, Dr. Hari Shetty, Professor Nilesh Thakre, and Anita Soni. First, I'd like to thank you all for inviting me. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. It's always very special to speak to any professional that deals with any aspect of the human brain and nervous system. And like I tell my psychiatry colleagues and I tell psychologists, I'm a neurosurgeon. I go into people's heads, I operate, I cut, remove the bone, go inside, remove tumors. But just like I use the scalpel to go into the brain, all of you, when you are dealing with the clients, go into the brains of your clients because the seat of the mind is in the brain. You do exactly what we do, but I use a scalpel and you use your counseling technologies. So you have to understand the importance of the work that you do. Because sometimes I feel that all the other healthcare professionals, whether it's physiotherapists, occupational therapists, they come from medical college backgrounds, but psychologists come from the humanities. And sometimes you don't integrate into the medical field as much as you really should, because mental health, wellness plays a very, very important role in the overall healing process. So the purpose of my talk really is to talk about holistic healing and to show you how the mind, which is seated in the brain, emotions and the body are all deeply interconnected. So my first section will be a little bit about the human brain. The human brain contains 100,000 million neurons. Now, if, this may not, to put this in the right context, let me tell you something truly astonishing. If I take your brain, your one single brain, and take out all your neurons and put them one after the other, the distance is 3 times that from the earth to the moon. That is the amount of hardware each one of us possesses in our heads. So the brain is basically divided into what's called the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain has 2 parts, the cerebrum and the diencephalon, and we are going to talk a little bit about these two. The midbrain and the hindbrain have their own roles, which we'll look into as we go along. So the cerebrum is really the programmable part of the brain. It tells us what's good, bad, right, wrong. It is what gives us our individuality. Each one of us is different because of what's in our cerebrum. And most of our conscious thoughts reside there. The limbic system, which is more on the inner side, is responsible for our emotions as well as memory. And the hypothalamus is what connects the brain and the body, because the hypothalamus controls a very important gland called the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is the master gland that controls all the hormones in the body. So the brain, through the hypothalamus, controls the whole body through its hormones, and all things like hunger, thirst, response to pain, pleasure, sexual satisfaction, anger, everything all is controlled through here. Now people look at the brain, but one thing that we don't recognize is the connectivity. Imagine 100,000 million neurons all connected to each other. The number of connections is impossible to even count. And understanding brain connectivity is a very important part of mental health. I like this quote from Milton's Paradise Lost, who says, "The mind is a place on its own. It can make a heaven out of a hell or a hell out of a heaven, and we do this every day. When we have everything, we still live lives that are sad and miserable, and there are people who, having nothing, can be living in heaven." So I think this is one of the single most important statements in this whole talk, that the mind is a place of its own. The next part of my talk is a little bit about happiness. Very early on in my student days, I asked this fundamental question: why aren't people happy? And I've devoted my whole life to trying to understand why aren't people happy? Because wherever you go, whoever you meet, and from ordinary people to gurus to CEOs to everyone, people who seem to have everything don't seem to be happy. So, let's just look at happiness. And you're wondering what that is. Well, that's actually black, darkness. And I ask yourself, imagine darkness. Okay. Now, if you're out in the dark, can you push the darkness away? Can you move away darkness? You can't. So if darkness symbolizes everything that's not working in our lives, what we try to do sometimes is try to push it away. I'll be happy when this problem goes away. I'll be happy when so-and-so does this. That's not going to happen. You can't move darkness away, but what you can do is shine a light. Because when you shine a light, the effect of the darkness goes away. So this is something that you have to recognize, that when you're dealing with your clients, okay, instead of focusing on shifting the darkness, put light, something that takes the effect away. So these are 5 fundamental reasons. This is my hypothesis. Fundamental reason 1 is our inability to live in the present moment. So, if you see today for all of you is a happy day, isn't it? But yet we are not happy. You know why? Because you're either upset about something that happened in the past, or you're worrying about something that happens in the future. Animals in nature do not do that. They live in the moment. Okay. And one of the reasons we are unhappy is that we drag the past and the future into today. So that's one reason. Fundamental reason 2 is there's a mismatch between our conscious mind and the subconscious and unconscious. This is all you're familiar with. The mind that we all know of is the conscious mind. But that's the tip of the iceberg. The real mind is in our subconscious and unconscious, things that we don't even know exist. And that is what drives us. That is what controls us. That decides our behavior. And that is why very often there are things that you want to do, you're unable to do, because your subconscious, unconscious mind has this powerful grip on you. All right? So that is one of the other reasons. Then, and very often what has happened in childhood leaves deep mark on the subconscious and unconscious. And therefore, it literally sabotages the plans and intentions. Doesn't it happen to all of us? Our conscious mind decides something and our subconscious will completely sabotage it without our even knowing. So just recognizing this is important. Fundamental reason 3 is the lack of control of our higher human brain with the lower animal brain. Now I want to tell you, look at this. This is the human brain. This part that you see, this is a primitive brain. This is exactly like that of animal brains. You take the brain of a dog, a cat, a camel, and a horse, and this part of the brain is identical. What makes us human is this part, the higher cortex, the ability to know what is good, bad, right, wrong. And what has happened is that if you see the way evolution has gone, the higher brain has grown very suddenly. And so it doesn't have complete control over the lower brain. So we have a hot, what we call an animal brain, and a cold human brain. The cold human brain makes all the decisions, but the hot brain very often overrides it. So a lot of our problems are because our animal brain, actually without our knowing it, is controlling our more human brain. Fundamental reason 4 is a gap between what we want and what we have. Obviously, why are we unhappy? I want something and I don't have it. But then I said, well, if that is like that, then what if we went? What if I went and got what I wanted? I should be happy, right? But people, after getting what they want, don't seem to be happy. Or what we are taught spiritually is accept what you have. That should also make you happy. Unfortunately, both these things don't make us happy. So acceptance, it's easy to say, but in real life, it's not so good. And achievement is great. You move and get what you want. But why aren't we happy? Because what we want moves ahead. If today you don't have a car and you say, I'm going to be happy with a Maruti car, when you get a Maruti car, you're not happy because now you want a Honda or something else. And when you have your Honda, you want the Mercedes. And when you have the Mercedes, you want a Rolls Royce. You never seem to be happy because what you want keeps moving. All right. So this is the other cause. And the last reason is dependence on things outside of us. See, there are 3 things in our life that we have. There are things that we have, that's the content of our life, our possessions, our money, our clothes, our cars. There are things that we do, that are processes, what we do in life. And then the third aspect of living that we are not aware of, and that is being, that's contextual. So if you ask anybody what they want in their life, what do they say? I want to be happy. I want to be in love. I want to be a great ballet dancer. I want to be a great psychologist. Whenever you ask somebody what they want, you automatically say, I want to be. But what we believe is, first I must have, then I will do, and then I will be. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Because when you have, you do, and then you want to have more. and you get stuck in a cycle between doing and having. What really works is the opposite way. You create context. You say, this shall be. And then you do what you have to do. And then you have what you want to have. One classic example is that of Mahatma Gandhi, who created the context and said, India will win freedom through non-violence. No country in the world had ever got freedom through non-violence. No country. But he created the context, and then he and the Indian people did what they had to do, and we got our freedom. And there are numerous such examples. So in life, you first be. That is, you create. And the interesting thing is, you don't need anything for creation. It's something that comes to you from within. So now we'll briefly look at the mind-brain and the brain-body relationship. So we'll look a little bit about health. I'll do this very briefly because this is a slightly addition part, but I want to connect health with the mind. So why are people unhealthy? And this is a separate lecture all by itself, but I'll quote a very interesting article from Dr. Dean Ornish from California, who did this very amazing study on the role of diet and healthy lifestyle on something called telomeres. So this is that published study. It's really very interesting. So what are telomeres? You all know we have DNA, right? Genes, they are chromosomes. The tip of the chromosome, like a nail, is something called telomere. Now the telomere, it gradually keeps on decreasing. When we are born, it is maximum. By the time we die, it reaches 0 point and then the cell can't multiply. Now the thing is, today, it's possible to measure telomeres. Earlier it was not possible. So our telomeres literally predict how long we could possibly live. And it's a simple blood test now. Now as the telomeres get shorter, death comes more closely. So it's an indication. So this is what a telomere looks like. And then, as we age, you can see it becomes lesser and lesser. So several diseases, including stroke, cancer, cardiovascular, they are associated with smaller telomeres. So what was the study that he did? Very interesting. Please listen to this carefully. He took two groups of patients. One group, and they were all cancer prostate patients. One group continued life as it is going on. The other group had 4 interventions. What he calls a plant-based diet, which basically means vegetarian diet, moderate exercise, 30 minutes of exercise, okay, meditation and yoga, and 1 social activity a week. Is this anything difficult? 30 minutes exercise, vegetarian diet, meditation, yoga, and 60 minutes of meditation, yoga, and 1 social activity. Now see what happened. In the group that did all of this, the telomeres increased by 10%. Telomeres never increase, they keep on decreasing. In the group that did not do this, the telomeres decreased by 3%, which they decrease anyway in all of us. Alright. So this is an amazing study, which actually you can see that's the data this is from the paper itself. So in other words, if you continue living our lives, your telomeres keep on decreasing. But by these 4 simple interventions, this is pure science. We know this. Does anybody not know this? The benefit of yoga, meditation, diet. But now science is actually showing that it can alter, slow down, reverse the aging process. Now this is interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about the female brain. Since we are a women's university. Now this is very interesting. The female brain is 9% smaller than the male brain, but has the same number of brain cells. In other words, there is more power packed in a smaller area. Okay? Sounds good, right? Okay, so if anybody tells you your brains are smaller, tell them, but we have the same number of cells in a smaller area. Okay? Second, the female brain is very different. It is differently sensitive to stress and conflict. Actually, the female brain can see, sense and, hear things differently. They use different brain circuits as compared to men. And of course, depression and psychological changes occur more during periods of hormonal flux, like menstruation, puberty, and menopause. Now, the hippocampus, which is responsible for emotion, is larger in women. That makes sense, right? Because women are more emotional. The brain circuitry for language is larger in women. Have you ever heard a girl stammer? But only boys stammer. Okay? Girls never stammer. Because their language area is bigger. Alright? Then circuits for observing emotions in others are larger. This is all science. This is all proven on PET scans, MRIs and everything else. Alright? So, emotional area is bigger. language area is bigger, and the ability to observe emotions in others. So men tend to not be so responsive to emotions. Can read faces and tone of voices better, have the ability to connect deeply in friendship, and have a better ability to diffuse crisis. This has been tested. You put a man and a woman in a crisis area, women tend to be more stable, because in a crisis you have to, have equanimity or balance. Now, the estrogen and the brain, there's a lot of science to it, is actually neuroprotective, and it helps in recovery faster. We've actually noticed this, that following stroke, following spinal cord injury, and we've actually done research on this, the recovery in women is faster because of estrogen, especially if they are premenopausal women. It also has a positive effect on memory. Men tend to lose their memory in old age much more than women. All right? Then hormones. Now, the thing about the female brain is it is what we call almost marinated by hormones. They actually create the woman's reality. They shape her values, her desires, and tell her day to day what is happening. So that's the only flaw, that your brain is not a constant brain. The brain literally fluctuates for every day of the week. All right? Now, there's this particular syndrome, it's called extreme premenstrual brain syndrome, where the future looks very bleak. Women start hating themselves. These are transient, but for the women, it's very real. But they were normal in the rest of the month. So this is something very important, that you have to understand, that just because you're feeling a particular way today, it doesn't mean that that's reality. You have to recognize that your brain perceives the world based on what your hormones are doing. All right? So that's why it's a transient reality, and very often we make decisions based on the transient reality. I'm going through a period of hormonal flux, I'm stressed out, I'm worried, and I decide I don't want to do this, I want to end this relationship, I want to go here. We base it on what? On something transient. Okay, so this recognition, that is important. So biology affects but does not lock the reality. This is very important. It affects but doesn't lock it. Right? So we have to use our intelligence, our determination. This can alter our own behavior, reality, and creativity. Then decisions. So again, decisions should not be based on emotions. Emotions are by their very nature transient, and decisions should be based on logical thinking. So this is very important, that transient reality is not permanent reality. Why does somebody commit suicide? Because they believe that transient reality is their permanent reality. Nobody, survival is such a basic instinct. And why should somebody even attempt to end their life? Because they believe that where they are right now, that will always be so. Just realizing that tomorrow is another day can sometimes alter decision making, and it can actually save lives. Now, this is interesting. Women remember small details of the very first date and all the fights. Okay, this has been documented. All right. Males remember very little. Men, now this explains a lot. Men have 2.5 times more brain area for sexual drive. 2.5 times. And their brain areas, which is basically the amygdala, are larger for action and aggression. All right. So all this explains a lot, And there's actually there was a study done where, males and females were made to watch a scene of a movie of just a male and female talking. And in the male brain, the sexual area was activated, not so in the female brain. So they've actually done, you can do all this on PET scans, you can on functional MRI scans. Now, basically, what you want to understand is that when we were conceived in utero, the basic default brain is a female brain. So for the first 8 weeks of our life, all our brains were female brain. Then, because males have one X, because of the one X chromosome in the male brain, there is a release of, there's what is called a testosterone surge, which kills the cells of communication and emotional sensitivity, and results in a growth of aggression and sexual areas. Our brains, what they were going to be, male and female, got decided 8 weeks intrauterine. All right. So the default setting is a female brain, which has 2 X chromosomes, in which the emotional and communication areas are developed more. So we are functionally different because our brains are different. It's important to understand that. Yeah. Now the female, at the first 3 months, a baby girl's eyes contact facial gazing increases 400%. 400%, whereas the baby boy skills don't at all. This is first 3 months of life. Girls learn to speak earlier, have a bigger vocabulary, and very rarely have speech problems. Now, at puberty, it's a very turbulent time. The brain is sprouting, it's reorganizing, it's pruning neurons, it's marinated with high levels of estrogen. There are surges. There's an obsession with looks, judging yourself with you compare yourself to your peers. It's a conflict time. It is important for parents to understand what girls are going through in these teenage years because it's hormonal, it's in the brain, it can't be helped. All right? So this is very important to understand. Now at menopause, this is the last part of the female brain, actually what is called the haze shifts. Now the brain is no longer marinated by estrogen, progesterone. It's more sturdy, it's a steady machine. Now, women post-menopause are willing to take more risks. They walk in the direction of their dreams. They are less worried about pleasing others. So it's a time of rediscovery. So menopause is not all that bad. Menopause is a time when women are really themselves. They are not being influenced by their hormones anymore. All right. So the mature female brain actually peaks during menopause. Now here's something. Men lose more of their cortex than women older. So you find dementia happening, with a greater severity in men as compared to women. There are some special functions of the brain, that was of the female brain. I'll just rush through this fast. Now, like I said, brain circuits are very important. The brain likes to, just remember one thing, the brain likes to fire the same circuits again and again. And it takes about 40 days, roughly, to form new circuits. So this is the neurobiological basis of habit formation. A lot of our problems are habits. You want to get up at 6, but you're used to getting up at 8. You want to exercise in the morning, but you don't feel like that's because your brain circuits are not permitting you to. If you want to change that, do something for 40 days. In 40 days, the new circuits will form, and now that will become a habit. So habits are a synthesis of what is perceived and appropriate responses to them. The frontal lobe is responsible for recent habits, the parietal and temporal for long-standing habits. So habits form patterns in the brain and brain circuits. Now, if you want to be successful in anything, make it a habit. So if your studies or your work becomes a habit, you will succeed. If your health habits like walking or diet become a habit, do you ever think about has anybody ever thought, should I brush my teeth? It's a habit, right? Okay. But you do think about your diet. Every time you decide to go on a diet, you don't. You decide to go to the gym, you don't. That's because you can't break the habits, right? So like I said, it takes about 40 days. In literature, it varies anywhere from 30 to 60, but 40 is an average. It's like when you're driving a car, you're not thinking. You're just driving it spontaneously and automatically. So you have to, success comes when whatever you want to achieve becomes a habit. You should not be thinking. It should just happen. If you're studying, oh my God, I have to study. Believe me, you'll not excel in your exams. But if your studies comes naturally and spontaneously to you, like brushing your teeth, you will excel. I've been a professor for over 30 years and I've actually seen that. All right. Then consciousness, this is very important. There is something called the reticular formation, which is in the brainstem, which is the base of our consciousness. Now, this is even active when you're sleeping. So a mother will wake up to a child crying, but will not wake up to a husband snoring. The voice is the same. Whereas a father will not wake up to the child's crying, but he will wake up to knocking on the door. This is all, work that has been documented. That means even in your sleep, you're sleeping, your reticular formation decides, child is crying, I'm not going to wake up. So the brain is making those distinctions even in sleep. Yeah. Now, dreams are very important. That's a topic all by itself. I find dreams very fascinating, but for want of time, we can't do much. The dreams are a very important part. They may actually be creative. They give rise to new ideas, new solutions to old problems. The unconscious mind is in the process because the unconscious mind is the major mind. And dreams are all about what's happening in your subconscious and unconscious. And it actually consolidates what is called memory traces. Now, this is interesting. Love in the brain. Now, one of the things I say, there's only one true love in the world, and that is that of a mother for a child in one direction, not in the reverse. For mother's love for a child. You know why it is true love? Because it is unconditional. All other relationships that we call love are actually conditional. You do this for me, I do this for you. We call it love, but they are conditional. Now, romantic love is actually brain chemistry. There are no emotions in the heart, by the way. We keep saying heart, right? There are no emotions. All the emotions, the heart is just a muscle pump to pump blood. The feelings of romantic love are all in the brain, the limbic system and the hypothalamus. So there's a chemical, PEA, phenylethylamine, which is, you know the flush of the initial romance, you meet somebody, you date, you know how exciting it is? Well, it's all PEA. Okay, there's a chemical in the brain and there's a flush, is the thrill of the initial stage of any romantic relationship. Dopamine and oxytocin also play a role. But PE effect lasts for a short while only. And over time it diminishes. So that is why the excitement of an initial relationship goes away. When you first date, your boyfriend will have flowers and chocolates and gifts and everything else. And then when you start going, when you settle down into something more serious, suddenly all that disappears. And why? Because now there is no more PEA. Okay. So long-term relationships are endorphin-based. So there is another thing. There's something called endorphins, which give you the feeling of warmth and comfort. So endorphin levels are known to drop when a spouse dies. Suddenly there's a drop. So the secret of a successful relationship long-term is to shift from a PEA-based relationship to a endorphin-based relationship, where there is warmth and tenderness. We keep saying, why isn't it like before? It can't be like before because PEA tapers off naturally. Okay. So I know talk about love and the brain, but actually love is all neurochemistry. Now, brain modulation, I'll just talk a little bit just about some brain disorders that you can modulate. By modulating the brain, you can actually take away certain symptoms. So there's a field which you should study. It's called psychoneuroimmunology. It's a fascinating field which actually shows, the entire book's written on it, which show how the body's immune system is modulated by the brain. Nobody knew this before. So when you're stressed, when you're anxious, when you're negative, your body's immunity is low, and so you're more likely to contract a disease. Positive thoughts actually enhance our body's immunity. So it's like, if somebody has COVID in this room, all of us will take COVID, but all of us will not become positive. Why? Because some of our body's immunities are stronger. And the field of psychoneuroimmunology very clearly says that the body's mental, emotional, psychological state directly modulates the immunity. It's been proven. You can actually do the blood levels. You can test various levels and check the immunity. Now, this is a very interesting study, and if it didn't come from Stanford, I would not believe it. This was a study done many years ago on cancer breast. They took two groups of patients, 30-30. One group got all the regular surgery, radiation, chemo. And the other group got the same treatment, but were given group therapy where they were made to vent out all their emotions. All right. Look at the survival difference. 6 years in the ones where there was group therapy, 3 years in the one where they got conventional treatment. So this is, an amazing study to show that our pent up, the emotions that we repress are the ones that finally either cause or even worsen or take away, because now this is psychoneuroimmunology. Okay. So if I'm anxious, I'm negative, I've got toxic thoughts, my immune system is low, so it can't combat the malignancy as it comes. So cancer is now being connected to withheld emotions. The biggest killer, after maybe tobacco, or as much as tobacco, lack of sleep and other things, is withheld emotions. Stuff that we bottle up within us. And there's a lot of science, the regular medical world will not let you know this. If you look at the literature, there is tons of literature on this. But nobody talks about it because of whatever reasons. Because oncology is this big, huge field and everybody wants to do surgery and radiation and chemo. Realizing that, and there's some amazing books written. One of the books I would strongly recommend is to read a book by somebody called Maya Tiwari, The Path of Practice. An amazing book. Maya Tiwari had cancer of the ovaries, was operated 20 times in New York City. Radiation, chemo. She was told that you're going to die, there's nothing more we can do for you. And then she sort of retired into a hut in Connecticut. It snowed over there. And then for a few months she was alone. And in that time she discovered the healing power within women. Okay. She was told she will not live for more than a year. It's 40 years and she's still alive. And she has shown how, just through natural healing methods, cancer can be completely diminished. So that's a book worth reading. It's very interesting. Whales and elephants never get cancer. The two largest animals on the planet, they don't get cancers ever. Some other animals do. Now, there's a condition called you know OCD. Have you heard of OCD? So there are obsessions, there are compulsions, and that becomes a disorder. So here's this woman who used to wash her hands about 100 times a day. 100 times. Every time she touched something, she would wash her hands. Her kid, somebody rang the bell, she opened the door, she would wash her hands. And she was going crazy. She wanted to kill herself. She had even attempted to kill herself because it was she knew what she was doing was wrong, but she couldn't control it. So that's the circuit involved in OCD. So we did this scan. Now look at this. We did this scan. It's a functional MRI. On the left side, that is when you and I wash our hands, only that part of the brain gets activated. You can see normal. But in her, when she washed her hands, the whole brain lit up. Okay, look at the difference. So washing hands for us, only our hand areas light up. In an OCD patient, washing hands, the whole brain lights up. Okay, so it looks like washing hands obsesses is something, you know, people call her crazy, people say all kinds of things to her. The problem was in the brain. She couldn't help it. And then, you know, we identified this is this thing. There's a very specific, precise area of the brain that we can go into. And we put a frame on the patient, and that's an electrode you can see that I'm holding. And we put that in the brain, and we actually burn a small part of the brain. And you can see here, you can see that white, that's the area of your brain. We do this, she comes out of it, instantly it's gone. The hand washing is gone. All right? One lesion in the brain and a habit that people thought she was crazy, but she had a brain problem. There was a part of the brain that was not working. Then this is a pain. So we had this patient with very severe the thalamus is the area responsible for pain. And this patient had a thalamic infarct. So the area which perceives pain was damaged. She was in terrible excruciating pain. And what we did is we put this, that's the brain cover that you can see. We put an electrode on the brain. That's the motor cortex. And we stimulated that. And by stimulating it, and controlling it like this, the pain just disappeared. You just put it on. So in other words, symptoms that are perceived differently can actually be managed by brain modulation. Then stem cells, regenerative medicine. There was an old thinking that once the brain is damaged, you can't do anything about it. But the new thinking is that it's possible through cellular replacement and repair to bring about some amount of regeneration. So the word stem cells comes from the stem of a tree. And just like the stem of a tree gives rise to branches, leaves, fruits, flowers, etc., there are some cells which can become any cell of the body. So stem cells can become any cell. Okay, you can make it into a brain, into a heart, into a muscle. And we've been treating several neurological disorders with that. In children, it's autism, cerebral palsy, intellectual disability. You can treat patients with paralysis, degenerative conditions like motor neuron disease, dementia, and muscular dystrophy. So now this is something I want to talk to you about. The incidence of autism is going through the roof. Okay. When I was a medical student, it hardly existed. There was a time when it was 1 in a couple of thousand. Today, as per US figures, it is 1 in 40 births. 1 in 40. All right. And the mainstay of this treatment is psychology. It is ABA. Are you aware of what is ABA? Which is done by psychologists. There is a need, a major need for these children to be looked after because they have behavioral issues. They have so many issues, they can't go through a normal education system. And I'd really want that at least some of you take this on because it is the need of the hour. These children need your help. Nobody, there is, of course, we are doing some medical work. I'll share that with you. But there is so much that you have to do. So please look into that field because the number of children is huge and they don't know where to go. They go from pillar to post looking for proper therapies. As doctors, there's a limit to what we can do. We can treat their, if they have hyperactivity, we can treat them with drugs. I'm using stem cells, but we can treat, but after that they require. So this is just, I'm hoping that as young students, at least some of you get stimulated to look into the field. These are wonderful, lovely children. Okay, there's something so nice about them. And yet, they are limited, handicapped because of their parts of the brain are damaged. So, it's a recently described disorder, 1943. Appears in the first 3 years of life. We call it a spectrum disorder, and boys have it 4 times more than girls. And here you can see the incidence. This graph was till 1920, 1922, this has become 40. Okay, and these are US CDC figures. These are not my figures. Which means that 70 million people are on the spectrum. That's 1% of the world's population. 1% of the world's population today has autism and they have nowhere to go. You are their hope. All right? So the problem in autism, and I'm taking some time to talk a little bit, just to motivate, inspire, stimulate some of you to take up this field. They have 3 symptoms: problems in communication, problems in social interaction, and repetitive behaviors. And what we've done is, this is some original work we did. You'll be surprised. There's such a high incidence and nobody had studied what parts of their brain are affected. We did this study where we found that their mesial, their temporal areas, the cerebellum, the smaller brain. We've done more than 3,000 scans, 3,000 kids with autism, and we found an identical pattern. And this matches with their symptoms. Broca's speech area is affected, so they can't speak. We see areas of hyperactivity. So this is just to show you, what you see blue on the scan are areas of hypometabolism. That's brain that's working less than normal. There should be no blue. If you do our scans, there will be no blue. And this paper was published, one of the world's first papers in the prestigious journal, World Journal of Nuclear Medicine, where we showed what are the brain areas that are not functioning in children with autism. So this is our paper. And what we do with, the treatment is very simple. We do, the bone just above the hip bone, pelvic bone. You can see we put a needle there and aspirate what is called bone marrow. You heard of bone marrow? It's the liquid in the bone. It's very simple. Put a needle, take this out. It happens in 10 to 15 minutes. We take this bone marrow to our laboratory. We run it through machines called centrifuges and separate what are called stem cells. And then through a very thin needle, we do what is called a lumbar puncture. It's a needle which you put in the lower spine and we inject it into the spine fluid. Why spine fluid? Because the spine fluid directly is connected to the brain fluid. It's one circuit, right? And so it directly goes there and it starts a repair process. Now I'm just showing you 1 or 2 slides, but on top, what you see, the blue is the damage before the stem cells. You can see the blue area above. Now see the pictures below. This is 6 months after the stem cells. You can see the damage is gone. I'm showing you one slide, but I have over 3,000 such scans. Over 3,000. Showing that the damage of children with autism can be repaired. They do not have to suffer. But after this, they need rehabilitation. They need counseling. I do this therapy and then after that we find that no rehabilitation is available. So, if the brain is like a computer's got hardware and software. I can only fix the hardware with the stem cells. The software will come from where? Say it, I want to hear. Who will put the software? All of you, exactly. All right. So, there is no point my repairing this if you are not available to put the software. I cannot do counseling. I'm a surgeon. I'm a hardware fixer. I fix the hardware and then, send the child back to the patients. So, your role is very important. And the world's first scientific paper, and that's a matter of honor, the world's first scientific paper on stem cell and autism, it came from us. We published the paper. The second paper was from China, third from Italy, and the fourth and fifth are from the United States. So we have the world's first scientific paper on cellular therapy in autism. And this is in what is called a PubMed Index journal. There are different types of journals. So this is a PubMed Index journal, our paper. And we have 16 other papers after that. Now in cerebral palsy, where there is damage to the brain, but it's more physical. They have tightness, spasticity. You can see on the left side the brain damage. The same child, 6 months after stem cells, you can see the damage is gone. And this is our paper on cerebral palsy. This is not the world's first paper, but it was one of the earlier papers. There were total 15 papers on that. Now dementia, you can see above, this is above you can see the blue area, which is the damage. You can see all this, okay? So this is the damage before stem cells, and you can see, so you can see this. This is hypoperfusion, and after stem cells, you can see it's yellow or fully active, all right? So even in dementia and Alzheimer's, you can actually repair. The results are not as good. Children, the results are amazing. In adults, because the brain is less plastic, there's something called neuroplasticities. They're not as plastic. So how do you keep the brain healthy? What the brain needs is blood supply, oxygen, enough glucose, not too much, and vital nutrients. So we are finding a lot of, with deficiencies of vitamin C, vitamin B, and vitamin D, most important. Vitamin D is severely deficient. You do all your vitamin D levels, I'm sure it will be less. You know why? Because you don't sit in the sun. Vitamin D is manufactured, how? It is manufactured when you're in the sun, the skin, and we don't sit in the sun. So all of us have low vitamin D levels, all right? So the 4 pillars of happy living: balanced nutrition, exercise, enough rest, reduce stress. And these are the simple secrets: 30 to 40 minutes of walking, lots of water. We forget water. We need to be hydrated because a big chunk of our body is made of water. We don't have enough hydration. Vegetarian diet, avoid alcohol, tobacco, 8 hours of sleep, laughter, enjoy what you do, don't bottle up emotions. The mind resides in the brain, but the brain is part of the body. If the brain is not hydrated, it's not going to be as active. If the brain doesn't have enough nutrition, it's not going to be as active. So the mind is not separate from the body. All right. Now, diet is a separate talk. I can speak for a couple of hours just on that. But there are foods that harm and there are foods that heal. So these are the culprits. You all know it. I don't want to go into details. Artificial food, toxin cooking, preserving, storing. And some of the issues that are a problem are folic acid, cholesterol, glucose. Problem with Indian diet is that we are less in folic acid, and so that results in high levels of something called homocysteine that leads to cerebral strokes. We have a problem with our diet. We have a problem with our cholesterol. The low density is the bad one. The high is the good one. There's something called free radicals that damage the brain. And there are antioxidants which can protect the brain. So I'm just running through this superficially. And this is something I want to show you. If you see this, can you see this? And you can see this. This is empty here. So that is blood coming and suddenly the blood flow is stopped. There's no blood going there. And when I operated, I opened the neck. This is in the neck vessel. This is what we got. Can you see this? So this is what happens to, I want you to see this picture very carefully. The next time you go to McDonald's, next time you have a pizza, this is what is happening to your blood vessels. It looks exactly like the cheese you eat, okay? This is taken out, I have taken this out from a patient. You can see it's the shape of the blood vessel. I want this picture to, get into you. Alright, there you can see I've opened it up and now the blood vessel is restored. Now this is a structure. I had a Professor Golwala. He had written a textbook of medicine and he used to teach us when we were students. So he said the A to H risk factors: anxiety, body build, cigarette smoking and contraceptives. Please remember, contraceptives are dangerous. They lead to increased incidence of stroke, diabetes, diet, exercise lack, family history, gout, hypertension, hyperlipidemia. These are all the risk factors. Yeah. Hypertension, diabetes is a major risk factor, needs to be controlled. And there are simple things like yoga, deep breathing, Gayatri Mantra chanting. There's science to it. There are published papers on the effect of Gayatri Mantra. Then we find natural therapy very useful. There are several natural therapy centers. We are using hyperbaric ozone. In a hospital, we have 3 hyperbaric chambers. Because we don't get natural oxygen, we put people into this chamber. We are finding improvements in everything. From autism kids to people with dementia, they're all improving. So what happens is that there is increased oxygen that goes all through the brain. There's angiogenesis, new blood vessels form. It has an antidepressant effect similar to that exerted by serotonin. It promotes neuroplasticity. So we are increasingly finding, see, in nature, animals live in the wild. There are less people breathing and there's more green, right? Here we have more people breathing and no green and the air is polluted. So we say, okay, now I can't say go and live in a jungle, right? So let's compensate for it by using technology like hyperbaric. There's also ozone therapy. So oxygen is O2, ozone is O3. It's activated oxygen and it has we use this a lot in COVID. Our hospital was converted to a COVID hospital and we use ozone with excellent results. We really could help our patients a lot. Now just some general closing remarks. So like I said, a basic cause of happiness was a gap between what you want and what you have. So what's a practical solution? Have clear long-term goals. Very often we don't have long-term goals. We just look at something short-term. Have a clear long-term goal. Make a roadmap how you will get there. All right. You might want to one day become Vice Chancellor of SNDT like Professor Ruby. How many of you want to become Vice Chancellor? Come on, raise your hand. Somebody at least. Okay, good. At least there's somebody. Maybe one day you will. Oh, that's nice. Make a roadmap how you will get there. You cannot become Vice Chancellor from here. Second, break up this roadmap into short-term goals. Have you understood? A long-term goal, a roadmap, and break it up into short-term goals and then accomplish one short-term goal at a time. One single goal at a time. Alright? Now this is a very interesting lesson. This is the last part of my talk. In 2001, there was an earthquake in Kutch. You may not remember it. Most of you are not born that time. And I offered to offer relief there. We were airlifted by the Air Force. The village we were posted in, half the people were dead. It was freezing cold. It was, we had converted a bullock cart into an operation. This is how it was. All the houses were down. There was nothing in fact, and this is me doing an operation on a bullock cart. But when we went there, we actually found that, we reached there a couple of days after the earthquake. We found that the villages were very, very organized, calm. They had the whole situation. Half the people in the village were dead. It was freezing cold. All the houses were down. There was not a single house. We used to work till late in the night and we used to get warm from the fire. So once I asked the locals, how? I mean, before we came, how were you so organized? He told me something that altered my life forever. He said when this happened, it was early in the morning. It was Republic Day, by the way. It was 26 January. And Bhuj. And the elders got together, all the people in the center of, together. And only 2 instructions were given. The first was, nobody will look at what we have lost. We will only look at what is still there and save it. It didn't matter who had died in your family. All right. The second thing is, everybody was given a job to do. You look after the kids, you look after food, you look after cooking, you arrange blankets, you do this. And you had to do it irrespective of your loss. The woman who was cooking for us, she had lost her 2 children, her husband, her entire house. She was in the farm, so she got saved, but her entire house, all her properties, everything was gone. And what was she doing? She was looking after us. And I looked at that woman and suddenly my problems, my difficulties, I felt ashamed of myself. What are the things that were worrying? She said this, usne ye kiya, usne wo kiya. And I said, this woman has lost everything. But what I learned from there was, like I said, the advice of the village elders, let's not look at what we have lost. Let's look at what we have. Now, what is human nature? Human nature is such that we always tend to look at what is not there. Right? We don't look and acknowledge that what is there in our life. There is so much to be grateful for. The wonderful parents that we have, the home that we have, the resources, the comforts, everything that we have. And we are more worried about what he said to her and she said to him and, all that stuff. So let's start. What I learned from that village in the middle of the worst disaster was, don't look at what has been lost. Look at what is still there. I remember a mother breastfeeding 2 kids. I was walking by and a mother was breastfeeding 2 kids. I thought one was hers and maybe she was doing somebody else's. And then the local person told me, you know what? Her kid died. She was breastfeeding 2 children whose mothers had died. This woman should have been crying for her own child. And what was she doing? She was giving comfort to 2 kids who otherwise might have died because they might have got neglected. So that is the incredible lesson. And so I have built up this huge facility. I have a hospital in Navi, Mumbai where we treat autism kids, cerebral palsy kids. We treat people who are paralyzed. We never look at what they don't have. I learned that lesson there. We look at what they have and try to enhance that. That's why when people come there, most of the time the focus is this child can't talk. But we look at what the child can do and what we have done in that process. We found that these kids have exceptional qualities. They do things that are inconceivable for us to do. Because we started looking at what they have rather than what they don't have. All right. So this is a simple trick in life. Enjoy what you have and accept what you don't have. So thoughts become things. So that's why what you think is very important. So let's learn from the past, prepare for the future, but live where? In the present. Live life one day at a time. I use this simple trick. This is a story from cricket that impacted my life. There was a cricket coach who was teaching young kids. And he asked the kids, how many of you can make a century? Raise your hand. What is the question? How many of you can make a century? So nobody raised their hand. Then he said, how many of you can make 1 run? Raise your hand. So what happened? Everybody raised their hand. So he said, now all of you go onto the field, make 1 run, make it 100 times. Okay. So if I ask you make a century, you will say no. If I say make 1 run, you will say yes, but you can make 1 run 100 times. So the lesson I learned from here was I live my life one day at a time. I wake up in the morning, I will tell myself today is 10th October 2022 and this day will never come again in my life. Will 10th October 2022 ever come again in your life? So I'm going to make today special. Alright? And then and I don't think the past is dead, it's cadaveric. Can you put life into a dead body? No. thinking about anything from the past, but you must learn from the past. Don't make the same mistakes again. The future is unborn. I mean, is it worthwhile you're thinking about which school your kid will go to before your kid is born? I mean, it's such a waste of energy, right? Which college will you go to? What will happen? So the future is like that. It's unborn. Live in the present. Then what happens? When you live in the present, you do 100% in the present. And then suddenly, when the future also starts becoming better. All right? So one of the things I tell everyone is that our life is nothing but a collection of choices and consequences. For every choice we make, there is a benefit and there's a price to pay. Nothing comes free. Okay, so what we have to do, what we do is we complain about the price and we don't enjoy the benefits, isn't it? You make a decision, any decision. A decision, you want to go abroad to study, you want to stay here, you want to do a master's, you don't want to, you want to marry. Any decision you make always has a benefit and a price. So my suggestion is enjoy the benefits, accept the price. I keep talking about this nature that free flow is the natural. You look at the universe, everything is in free flow. The earth is moving around the sun, the moon is moving around the earth, our blood is flowing, our hormones are flowing. So whenever you block anything, there's disease. All disease is because of blockages. Blockages in the heart, blockages in the lungs, and psychiatric or mental or higher function or cognitive issues are because of blockage of thoughts. Okay, so free flow is important. I talk of money because one of the major issues of problems is money, right? Everybody has an issue with money. And I compare money to, blood in the body. All right. So, just like blood flow, when blood circulates, it's good, right? When blood stops, there is disease. Likewise, money needs to flow. So instead of being the place where money is kept, you need to be the money where blood flows. All right. I'm just coming to an end. I'll just skip these few things. So little stress is good, but distress is not so good. A distinction you must make is between fear and danger. What is fear? It's stuff in your head. Danger is real. So very often we let fear block our things. So I'll just run through this. I like the story. Two prisoners look out of the room. One looks up and sees the stars. One looks down and sees the garbage. So you could be in the same situation. So with that, I will end my talk. I'll just... This is the last slide. So it says, this is not my recommendation. This is a recommendation from 100 doctors in the US, which are involved in preventive medicine. And this is the list. You can read it yourself. That believe in something good, focus on a higher purpose, find meaning in your life, develop your unique potential, choose work that is important, achieve balance in your life, manage stress, enjoy your friends, maintain meaningful social relationships, love the people you're with, stay positive, have a family doctor who helps you stay healthy, eat less but balance, avoid intake of harmful substances, exercise more, develop healthy but fun-filled habits, get 8 hours of sleep. So those are my conclusions, that our happiness is health is a state of our mind, but our mind is in the body. So everything is connected. Simple lifestyle changes can make a difference. Advanced brain imaging is telling us what's wrong, and modern medical technologies like stem cells and hyperbaric can help reverse many of these conditions. So my conclusion from dolphins, this is me with dolphins, be at peace and be accepting. Eat simple. I love dolphins. Their brains are very much like our brains. Exercise regularly, play and have fun, dance and feel good about life, and have love in your life. Thank you.